So if we take a minute and take a look around us, everything in our lives has been designed by someone. The building that we're in, the products that we surround ourselves with, and we know that there are a lot of important decisions that are made during the design stage that impact the rest of the life cycle of a product, of a building, of our lives, those types of things. So we have to think very carefully about the design stage because we can't reverse those impacts. So in our industry, there are over 250 billion meters squared of buildings in the world today. And over the next 40 years, we're expected to double that. And that is the equivalent of adding a new Paris to the planet every week. So that's a ton of building that we're doing. So what I'm hearing for us designers is one, job security, but also a lot of impact that we have on the world in terms of what we're building, how we're building, and what we're contributing. The building industry is responsible for 40% of material use and 40% of waste by volume that is sent to the landfill. So when we talk about impacts, like we here at the Institute, we talk about how we build buildings and then we tear them down and we send them to the landfill. And we want to shift how we do that. We want to not do that anymore. And how do we do that? As I'm sure all of you know, buildings and construction are also responsible for 37 to 40% of global carbon emissions every year. And that includes materials and construction, which are around 11% of global carbon emissions. So that's not nothing, right? When we transition to a world of renewable energy, I know we're all thinking about that. It's top of mind, but that will only reduce 55% of global emissions. And so the rest of those emissions, that 45%, is going to come from transforming how we design and manufacture and use products. So we're really talking about a paradigm shift. We're going from something linear, right? This is the model that we're very familiar with now, right? We pull things out of the ground, we manufacture things, we use them, and then we throw them away. And then Andrew, I love that you previewed this already. We want to move to a circular economy. And so when we talk about the circular economy, we mean going from that linear use phase to something more circular, right? If you think about nature, I'm in Portland, we talk about trees all the time. So let's talk about a tree, right? A tree grows from a seed. It grows in the forest. It's then, used in the forest by plants, animals, blah, blah, blah. And then when it dies, it returns back to nature to become another tree or become a plant or something like that, right? So it is a circular process. The natural cycle is a circular one. So how do we transform our manufacturing processes to sort of mimic that, right? So instead of manufacturing something and then throwing it away, how do we rethink about products, like Andrew was mentioning, to turn back into themselves or decompose or be recycled or things like that? Like, how do we switch from this linear mode to a circular mode? And so that's where Cradle Certified comes into play. We are a global standard, and it is based in the Cradle to Cradle design philosophy. And Cradle to Cradle Certified is the framework that manufacturers use to transform their manufacturing process into one that is actually circular. So we certify products that are healthy, circular, and equitable. We're the most advanced global standard for these types of products. We are used across many continents and many different types of industries. We've been around for about 12 years. But like I said, it is rooted in this cradle to cradle design philosophy, and we help manufacturers turn that into action. So the certification itself is holistic, which I'll talk about. It's science-based and it's third-party verified. So when I say healthy, circular, and equitable, those are sort of buzzwords. What does that actually mean? We mean products that are good for people, that are good for the planet, and are responsibly made. And so I'm going to go into how exactly we define that and how exactly we prove that a manufacturer or a process or a product is doing that. So one of the things that I loved as a designer when I was a wee baby designer, I heard about Cradle to Cradle Certified, and it kind of blew my mind because it was one of the first that was thinking so holistically about sustainability. It has always been a holistic framework, and it has always had these sort of 5 areas of impact. So we've got material health, product circularity, social fairness, water and soil stewardship, and clean air and climate protection. And it has always been this holistic. And so in order to get certified, a manufacturer and their product needs to be evaluated across all 5 of these categories. And there are 4, with version 4 of our standard, there are 4 levels of certifications, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And every 2 years, a manufacturer has to recertify and prove that they are making progress going from one step to the next. So what does that look like? In material health, we really want to understand what is in a product. What are the chemicals that make up this product? And are they healthy for humans? And are they healthy for the environment? So we're really looking and we're taking a hazard and risk approach. Are there hazards to this chemical in general across a supply chain? Is it hazardous to extract or extrude or use, in construction? And not only that, what are the risks of exposure, right? Because it's one thing if something is hazardous, but if there's no risk of exposure, then there's sort of we can kind of work with it there. But if we want to eliminate chemicals that are unsafe across the supply chain and hazardous when you have this risk of exposure. So we take a look at all of that and we go down to 100 parts per million, and we really get into the weeds here. We have a restricted substances list. And so on our list, which is 26,000 chemicals, we have some big ones that designers that I talk to are really concerned about. On our list, we've got PVC, we've got PFAS, which are known as the forever chemicals that have been getting a lot of attention in the media recently. We've got flame retardants, VOCs, formaldehydes, heavy metals. Like I said, those are just a few that we've got. And so when you find a Cradle to Cradle certified product, it has none of these things, which is fantastic. All right, when we talk about clean air and climate protection, we're looking at the impact of the manufacturing process, right? So what are the carbon emissions? What is the energy impact? We want to help manufacturers go from a really energy carbon intensive manufacturing process to something that is renewable energy. We're reducing those harmful emissions. We're quantifying that data and we're proving that we're doing it. So every manufacturer that goes through the Cradle to Cradle certifying process has to quantify their emissions and then show us their pathway to net zero. And our framework sort of leads them through that pathway. So for all those manufacturers who are signed in, I hear from you all the time, we've made these climate pledges. We really want to get to our net zero goals. How do we do it? Cradle to Cradle certified will help you do that. We help you get from that goal of where you're at now to net zero. Water and soil stewardship is one that's I think is really cool that we don't really talk about a lot. But when we talk about ecosystem health, like water and soil is really important. They're kind of the fundamentals, right? And so we want to make sure that the manufacturing process does not harm these two systems. We want to make sure the process is good for the ecosystem. So how do we make sure that the water is used in a responsible way? It's not being polluted. The soil around the factory is not being polluted, because that gets into a lot of issues. And so that has always been part of our standard. Of course, it wouldn't be Cradle to Cradle without talking about product circularity. And so we help manufacturers move from that linear model to redesign their process to be circular, to contribute to a circular economy. And so in this part of our framework, there are a couple different ways that manufacturers can achieve this, because we recognize all products are not, created equal. They're not the same. The same pathway won't work for every single one. So there's a couple different ways. When I was first starting, the classic example was carpet that turns into carpet. That circular Cradle to Cradle design philosophy is something that can turn back into itself at the end of its life. It can be taken back by the manufacturer and reused again. Maybe something like Andrew mentioned is biodegradable or compostable, like linoleum. That is a circular process, right? It's going back to nature. Maybe something is designed to be disassembled. Furniture is a classic example of this. How can we take something apart, use it again, tinker with it? That kind of thing. And then maybe there's a product that is using a lot of recycled materials. How do we make sure that we are encouraging manufacturers to use recycled materials, to increase the number of recycled materials that they're using, while also making sure that those recycled materials are safe and healthy for the environment? So like I said, this part of the framework is very robust. It has a lot of options for manufacturers to approach, but it really helps them think about this from the beginning of the design process. How do we redesign a product to be circular from the very beginning, re-engineer it? The last bucket that we call is social fairness. And Again, this was the thing that I loved about Cradle to Cradle Certified, because it was one of the first to be thinking about this when we talk about sustainability. And it has always been a part of our framework, is understanding the social implications of a manufacturing process and of a product. And we want to know, is it good for people? Is this company treating their people well? Are their suppliers treating their people well? Are these people who are working in safe, humane conditions? And is this company contributing to a fair and equitable society? This is actually one of the hardest categories that we have. It's one of the most robust in our framework, and I'm really proud of that. And it really helps manufacturers and companies evaluate their internal processes and build in those methods of social fairness and go beyond just their factory, and look into their suppliers and sort of encourage others to do this, which is really great. Because again, we don't believe that you can have a sustainable world if it is not an equitable one, if it is not a circular one. So since we're talking about innovation, we love to help manufacturers use the Cradle to Cradle framework to use it as a pathway to innovation and optimization, right? We're getting to the design phase. Like I said, we're in the beginning. We have to look at the design phase because that has so many impacts. So this framework allows manufacturers to prioritize action, to create roadmaps, and to get to those net zero, healthy, optimized products. It allows them to go through that journey. And at the end of it, we hope that that leads to industry transformation, that it pushes the industry forward and moves our whole industry into one that is much more circular. So here's just a smattering of some of the criteria that we have. Here, if you start at bronze on the bottom here, to be a bronze certified product for version 4, you're already doing a whole heck of a lot. So the manufacturers who are Cradle to Cradle certified, I see you, I love you, I know you're doing incredible work. So when you're bronze certified, you're already in compliance with our restricted substances list. Like I said, no PVC, no PFAS, no flame retardants. You have a pathway defined for your circularity, and you've studied to make sure that the materials you're using are in compliance with that. Like, you have a pathway to circularity, but you can actually use it, right? You've started to quantify your carbon emissions, your energy emissions. You're starting to integrate renewable energy and reducing those carbon impacts. The wastewater is not doesn't have any chemicals of concern in it. You have a soil conservation strategy in place. And as you move from silver, gold to platinum, we start to optimize our product, right? We start to pull out chemicals of concern. We start to go low VOC. We start to initiate that cycling pathway. Like, okay, you've designed it to be cycled. Now start cycling it. Take a look at how that works. Increase the amount of renewable energy you're using. Reduce your carbon even more. And by the time we get to platinum, we have not only eliminated any chemicals of concern, but we have substituted chemicals that are actually preferable, right? So when we talk about an optimized product, that's what we mean. It's a product that contains chemicals that are healthy for the world, healthy for the planet. You're actively cycling this product. You have 2 pathways that are going, right? So you're actively cycling multiple parts of your product, and almost all of your product is compatible with those pathways. So you're using that infrastructure that you've created. You're 100% renewable energy and zero carbon, and you have what is really cool, a positive impact story for your water and soil stewardship. So again, you've gone beyond your factory walls and you're looking at how you can benefit your community. With social fairness, it's a similar thing. At the bronze level, we want to start with, risk. Just identify your risks, make sure you know where the hot spots are, as we say, and then start to build in layers of accountability. So here's what that looks like. At the bronze level there at the bottom, you've done a human rights assessment. There is no child or forced labor in your product, in your supply chain. And as you go further up from silver, gold to platinum, you start to look at your suppliers. You start to add oversight policies. And then as you move to platinum, you have to make sure there are areas of accountability, that not only you have the policies in place, but you have corporate buy-in, executive buy-in, you have policies in place that are managed, and you have implement them, and you know how to enforce them. Because I think we've all worked at companies where there have been policies in place, but if you don't enforce them, it doesn't matter. And so we want to make sure that these policies are actually enforced and there's a level of accountability there. By the time you get to platinum, you have a diverse and inclusive workforce with a living wage, which I find fantastic. And then not only that, you're sharing what you learned with other manufacturers or with your community to scale those impacts, right? So we learn from each other, because that's a really important part of it. You don't have to take my word for it. Cradle to Cradle certified products are all third-party verified. There's no exception to that rule. So you know that someone who is maybe smarter than you or I has looked at this and put their stamp of approval on, which I loved as a designer. It gave me that extra confidence that I could talk to my client about it. So when you find a Cradle to Cradle certified product, you know it's healthy, it's circular, and it's equitable. So if you are pumped, you're ready to go circular, you're ready to take action. I love this quote from Greta Thunberg. She says, "I learned no one is too small to make a difference." And I know that when I was a designer, it sometimes felt like it was just another project. It was just me at my desk with a spreadsheet and another spec, and it didn't feel like I had that much impact. But I'm here to tell you, designers, you have a ton of impact. Metropolis magazine, and I'm sort of previewing what Avi's going to talk about later, but they estimate by 2050, interior designers will have an influence over 1/10 of the world's carbon emissions. That's a huge impact you have to make a difference in the world. The average designer has 26 times the spending power as an average consumer. And if you're on the top one in a top 100 firm, that skyrockets to like over 111%. The spending power. So that's a ton of spending power. To put that in perspective, that looks like a single interior designer spending more than $6.7 million every year in specification dollars. That can go from everywhere from $15 million to $55 million per interior designer per year. I don't know the last time y'all spent $55 million in a year, but I can tell you, you have incredible buying power. You can harness it. I work with manufacturers all the time who are dying to know what designers want to spend their money on. So you have a ton of power. And, you know, as we say, with great power comes great responsibility. But it does mean that manufacturers are listening to you. So when you say to a manufacturer, "Are you Cradle to Cradle certified? What is your sustainability story?" They are listening. And I know that because I hear from them every day. So let's get to it, designers. We can do it. You can work with Cradle to Cradle certified. Get us in your specs. Prioritize those products. We've got over 1,000 certifications with 500 different companies in 15 different industries. And if you've signed a material pledge of any sort, if you're a manufacturer who signed a pledge, if you're a designer who signed a pledge, if you're an owner who signed a pledge, Cradle to Cradle certified will get you all the pledges in one go. Our 5 buckets are basically perfectly aligned with all of the 5 pledges and the Mindful Materials Common Material Framework. So it's like a one and done, which again, I loved as a designer because I'm like, I did not have time to figure out these things. I know I want a good thing. Let's do this. And so Cradle to Cradle will tick all those boxes for you. If you have clients that are working on well projects or lead projects, or maybe you're looking at Green Star, or maybe you have sustainable development goals, again, Cradle to Cradle certified aligns with all of these. And so you can get points with well, with lead. You can contribute to over 11 sustainable development goals. A lot of products work with Green Star. So there's a lot here for you to align with all of your projects. Of course, you can find Cradle to Cradle certified products on Material Bank. I want to thank Material Bank so much for hosting this and for inviting me. But designers, you have the power. You can do it. And we can create a healthy and circular, equitable world together. Ask every rep you find, "Are you Cradle to Cradle certified?" Because you know what they do? They come to me and they say, "We want to do it," because they're listening to you. And I was that designer that kept asking, "Are you Cradle to Cradle certified?" And they're listening. So I'm so excited to be here and chat with you more. Thank you so much. I think we